Hello, guys. It's Gay Marie, Bailey's Bridges, and I'm a little overdue. I apologize, but we're going to keep this very short. So, I just wanted to give you a quick update on Bailey's Law, our other legislative proposals, and a few other things. So, Bailey's Law, because it did not pass the New York Assembly last year, now it has to start over again, all over from the beginning, basically. Unfortunately, this is the way it has to be. It's their process. So our bill for Bailey's Law has been assigned a new bill number in both the New York Senate and the New York Assembly. And in the Senate, the bill number is 1294, and in the Assembly, the number is 6509. And it's been introduced to both houses, and it gets referred to the Codes Committee in each chamber. And then after it gets to the Codes Committee, it goes to the floor for a vote, basically. That's summarizing. There's more to it, but I won't bore you with the details. I'm not too concerned about it passing the Senate, the New York State Senate, because it passed overwhelmingly last year in 2018. But as I've said a million times before, the Codes Committee in the Assembly is notoriously, almost infamously difficult to pass new penal code. So that's going to be the stumbling block, or the hurdle. And there is a piece of it that's to our benefit, and that is that we got the jump earlier this year. Last year, it didn't get to the Senate until, I think, April or May. And it didn't get through the whole process until the end of June. So it passed, just in the nick of time, and there was just really no way that we were going to be able to get it through both houses. But this year, we're moving it a little faster, and hopefully we can get it through the Codes Committee. That is going to take a lot of effort in reaching out to our local Assembly members and Codes Committee members of New York State and urging them to support Bailey's Law. And that's where we're at with that. So if you can give them a call, that would be great. Now, the secondary thing is that I've been pushing for new legislation to amend the New York State hate crimes statute. The New York State hate crime statute basically is a list of all these various crimes that can be designated as a hate crime when they're committed in conjunction with a bias. So whether it's religion, gender, it doesn't matter. If it's committed in conjunction with a bias, it can be charged as a hate crime. And this list ranges from everything from stalking to trespassing to assault, and it really runs the gamut. And it includes endangering. However, the endangering clause that is listed is a general endangering, and that would really never be charged when it comes to people with disabilities. And that's people with, young people with disabilities, 18 and up, or an elderly person. So that general endangering would really never be charged for someone who was victimizing someone with a disability. Why is that? The reason why is because almost all endangering charges are designated by the status of the victim. So that's why we have a general endangering, we have child endangerment, and we have endangerment of a vulnerable person, and we have endangerment of an elderly person. So we have different statutes, and unfortunately, despite the fact that the endangerment of a vulnerable person or a vulnerable elderly person are predominant crimes that are charged, especially in disability abuse cases. Those statutes are not listed on the New York State hate crime statute. And so that's been an argument of mine, is that it effectively precludes people with disabilities from filing these crimes as a hate crime. And we need to fix that gap. So I've spoken to both New York Senator Sue Serino, and I've been working on this over the fall, actually, and Assemblymember Dee Dee Barrett, and they are both looking into it, and I have a feeling they're both very interested, but I don't want to speak for them, but I'm really hoping that they are going to take up this legislation to amend the hate crime statute so that the endangering of a vulnerable person or endangering of a elderly person is included under the hate crime statute. And then the bigger news, even bigger news, is on Friday, after I spoke with the legislative director on Dee Dee Barrett's team, was that the issue that my family had with the Office of Victim Family Services, which I was quite outraged about. Office of Victim Family Services basically assists and provides resources and support and advocacy for victims of crime. And depending on the crime that had been committed, really dictates what type of eligibility services that services and support that you're eligible for. In some cases, many different types of crimes, you are eligible for reimbursement for financial losses. Now, this financial losses could be lost wages, property damage, other medical expenses. It really ties around those types of issues. But in our case, I discovered that there is a devastating flaw in the way Office of Victim Family Services operates. And I discovered it because they denied my claim for reimbursement for mental health costs after the loss of my son. And the reason why they denied my claim was because they have this arcane, they called it a policy, and then during the appeal called it a law, referred to it as a law, and I suspect that it is actually a law, whereby they do not compensate or reimburse claims whereby the victim had in any way contributed to their own death. Now, I was naturally outraged by this on several fronts. First, the most obvious in our case specifically was that by utilizing that decision, OVS basically was stating that it didn't matter, that the crime itself didn't matter. And that to me was unacceptable. It's like they negated that his death was the result of a crime. And unless you can really prove that beyond reasonable doubt, they're not going to change that decision, that denial. And then that decision is also based on how the case is prosecuted. So you really have no recourse and you have no standing in how this decision comes about, because you can't control the prosecutor and how that case is handled or what charges are set out, any plea deal, you have absolutely no control over that. And that plays a big part into the decision by OVS, you know. The other aspect that really bothered me about it was that regardless of how my son lost his life, I and our family are still victims. And that part was completely negated as well. So not only did that decision, does that arbitrary ruling, that law, negate the fact that a crime actually even occurred, but it also negates the fact that there are victims other than the person that died. So this has been something that I've been discussing with Sue Serino's office and Dee Dee Barrett's office. I was completely outraged when it happened. You know, when the decision came down, I tried to appeal it. I even drove to Albany, which is like an hour and 15 minutes away, to face-to-face have this appeal. And I'm sitting across from a panel of lawyers, and which is often the case when you appeal something. And the denial came down firm. So that's an issue that I've been trying to rectify, because I find it just cruel. I find it further victimizing of victim families. So I was very pleased when I was in touch with Dee Dee Barrett's legislative director on Friday when they said they were drafting legislation to close that loophole. And we don't have anything, I don't have anything in writing. I reached out to them again this morning and said, listen, you know, once you get it in writing, I really want the link. I want to share it with people, because this is really important, because it's not just for my family, but this applies to a lot of people, a lot of other cases. I mean, if you just stop and think about the many different scenarios in which this could apply, whereby if you're thinking about just even drug deaths, there's so many different areas where this applies, where the family is still victims. Excuse me. So I'm really anxious to see that legislation come to fruition, to get passed, because the number of families that it could really benefit is in the thousands. Unfortunately, it's in the thousands across the state. So that's where we are with all of the legislation. Unfortunately, as far as the final case for us personally, which is the Thompson case, he is still refusing to be brought for appearance in court in Ulster County, and that's a whole weird thing. Despite that he's in custody in Westchester County on murder 2 charges. And what I've been told is that because he's facing murder 2 charges in Westchester, Ulster County is holding off on forcing him to appear in court in Ulster by subpoena. If there was a subpoena issued, he'd have to appear, and Westchester County would have to oblige by transporting him up to Ulster County. But they are not doing that at this point. And it's my understanding that the reason why they're not doing that is because of the sense that prosecutors are getting of the case in Westchester and what the prosecutors down there will be seeking as a punishment for his killing of Madison Denmar in Yonkers on, I think, December 21st, 2017, 5 months after my son was victimized. And if he is convicted, Ulster County will ultimately drop the charges in our case. Now, I have mixed feelings about this because I feel as though, on the one hand, prosecutors really shouldn't be doing that. When you do a crime, you do a crime, and you should be held liable. You should still be charged. But at the same time, in New York, there is no consecutive sentencing, and he's likely, for these particular charges, he's likely to get really nothing, as sentence-wise. And then, because there's no consecutive sentencing, any punishment he did get would run concurrent with the sentence or conviction that he receives out of Westchester. So I understand why Ulster County is doing it that way. And also, they're doing it for financial reasons, to save money. It doesn't make sense for them to prosecute if there's no additional repercussions, so to speak. Ironically, I do not feel I'm okay with this. I'm okay with this decision. This case, to me, is different than the Teeter case. My son didn't know Thompson, and should he be convicted in Westchester, he actually will be getting a significant punishment where he can think about all the things that he's done. So I'm okay with that. Whereas I feel as though Teeter's case, she got off way too easy. And she's the one that had the connection with my son. She's the one that pulled him into it. She's the one that deceived him. She's the one that manipulated him and coerced him. And that's to me, has always been the bigger deal from day one. And so that case did not end well, as far as I'm concerned. And that's kind of where we're at with all of these things. This week, I think tomorrow morning, we're going to be doing another live. I came across the 2016 study from Office of Family and Children Services, highlighting abuse and exploitation in New York State. So we're going to be talking about that tomorrow. And in the meantime, we are rounding out our programming for public education on abuse and exploitation of people with disabilities. So if you can, go to the website and chip in to help cover our costs. Money donated goes directly to the nonprofit efforts, to both our legislative efforts, to get Bailey's Law, to get the hate crime statute, and get Bailey's Law federal, and also to get out the word with public education as far as the rampant nature of disability abuse and exploitation, and the resources available for people with disabilities who have been abused, and better able to help them speak out about it without fear of retribution. And we want to support them. We definitely want to support them and start preventing this from happening, because believe me, this is, even just the financial aspect of this type of abuse is estimated to be in the $50 billion annually range. $50 billion a year. And the only way that we're going to start curbing that is by empowering people with disabilities, getting the information out there, and holding people accountable. And those are our goals. So go to our website, baileysbridges.org, and hit the donate button to help us out. And I will talk to you tomorrow. See you later.